Part 1, Introduction, The Darkest Corners of Humanity. Some stories are so dark, so chilling that they linger in your mind long after you hear them. In the world of true crime, there are cases that push the boundaries of what we believe humans are capable of. Acts of cruelty, betrayal, and mystery that defy explanation. Today, we're diving into the shadows to uncover 6 of the most disturbing cases you've ever heard. From a family annihilated in the dead of night to a child whose cries were ignored by an entire neighborhood. These stories will haunt you, make you question, and remind you of the darkness that lurks just beneath the surface of everyday life. This is not for the faint of heart. These are real stories, real victims, real horrors. So turn down the lights, brace yourself, and join me as we explore the depths of human depravity in this true crime documentary. Let's begin with a case that turned a quiet farm into a house of nightmares. Part 2, Case 1, The Hinterkaifeck Murders. It's March 31, 1922, in the remote Bavarian countryside of Germany, a place where the nights are quiet, interrupted only by the rustling of leaves and the distant howl of a wolf. The Hinterkaifeck farm, a small homestead 40 miles north of Munich, is home to the Gruber family. Andreas, his wife Cecilia, their 2 children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old. The family is reclusive, rarely seen in town, but lately they've been on edge. Strange things have been happening. Footprints in the snow leading to the farm, but none leaving. Eerie noises in the attic. A set of house keys gone missing. Andreas tells a neighbor he feels watched, but no one takes it seriously. That night, the Gruber family goes to bed unaware that a nightmare is about to unfold. The next morning, the farm is eerily silent. A neighbor, concerned after the family misses church, visits Hinterkaifeck and makes a horrifying discovery. In the barn, 4 bodies. Andreas, Victoria, and young Cecilia lie in a pile, their heads smashed with a mattock, a farming tool similar to a pickaxe. The killer had lured them to the barn one by one, striking with brutal force. Inside the house, 2-year-old Joseph is found dead in his crib, his throat slit, and the family maid Maria, who had just arrived that day, is killed in her bed, her skull shattered. The scene is gruesome. Blood soaks the hay in the barn, and young Cecilia's body shows signs she survived for hours, pulling out her own hair in agony before succumbing to her injuries. What makes this case so disturbing is the aftermath. Evidence suggests the killer stayed at the farm for days after the murders, eating the family's food, feeding their livestock, and lighting fires in the fireplace. Footprints in the attic confirm someone had been hiding there for weeks, watching the family, waiting for the right moment. The investigation uncovered dark secrets, rumors of incest between Andreas and Victoria, and questions about Josef's paternity, but no clear suspects ranged from a vengeful neighbor to a serial killer named Carl Gabriel, but no one was ever charged. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved, a chilling reminder of a predator who lived among his victims, even in death. Who could commit such a heinous act, and why did they stay behind? Let's move to our next case, where a single night of terror changed a city forever. Part 3, Case 2, The Kitty Genoves Murder. It's March 13th, 1964, in the quiet neighborhood of Kew Gardens, Queens, New York City. The streets are dark, the air cold, as 28-year-old Kitty Genovese parks her car after a late shift at a bar where she worked as a manager. It's 3:15 a.m. and Kitty is just steps from her apartment when a man approaches, his footsteps quickening. She turns, sensing danger, but it's too late. Winston Mosley, a 29-year-old machine operator with a history of violence, stabs her in the back, his knife plunging deep. Kitty screams, "Oh my God, he stabbed me, help me!" Her cries echo through the night, but what happens next will make this case one of the most disturbing in history. Kitty's screams wake dozens of neighbors, 38 according to early reports, who peer out their windows watching as Mosley stabs her again. "I'm dying," Kitty cries, her voice desperate, but no one comes to her aid. Mosley flees when a neighbor shouts from a window, but he returns 10 minutes later, finding Kitty collapsed in her apartment building's hallway. He stabs her repeatedly, sexually assaults her, and leaves her to die, taking her wallet with $49.00 inside. It's not until 3:50 a.m., 35 minutes after the attack began, that a neighbor finally calls the police, but by then Kitty is gone, her life snuffed out in a brutal act of violence. What makes the Kitty Genovese case so disturbing isn't just the murder, It's the apathy. The New York Times later reported that 38 witnesses heard or saw the attack but did nothing. A story that sparked the term bystander effect, where people fail to act in emergencies because they assume someone else will. While later investigations showed the number of witnesses was exaggerated, some didn't hear the full attack, others were too scared to intervene. The case exposed a chilling truth about human nature. Sometimes we turn away from those who need us most. Mosley was caught a week later during a burglary and confessed to Kitty's murder, along with two others. He was sentenced to life in prison and died in 2016. But the question remains, could Kitty have been saved if just one person had acted? Let's move to our next case where a mother's love turned into a nightmare. Part 4, Case 3, the Andrea Yates tragedy. It's June 20, 2001, in a suburban home in Houston, Texas. Andrea Yates, a 36-year-old mother of 5, waits until her husband, Rusty, leaves for work. Her children, Noah 7, John 5, Paul 3, Luke 2, and Mary 6 months, are playing in the living room, their laughter filling the house. But Andrea's mind is far from joyful. She's been battling severe postpartum depression and psychosis for years, her mental health deteriorating after each childbirth. That morning, something snaps. One by one, she leads her children to the bathroom, fills the tub with water, and drowns them, placing their bodies side by side on a bed, except for Noah, whom she leaves floating in the tub. When she's done, she calls 911, her voice eerily calm. "I just killed my kids." Police arrived to a scene of unimaginable horror. The 5 children, all under 8 years old, are dead, their small bodies laid out in a row, their faces frozen in the peace of death. Andrea sits silently, her eyes vacant, as officers try to comprehend the scale of the tragedy. The investigation reveals a woman in the grip of mental illness. Andrea had attempted suicide twice, heard voices telling her to kill her children to save them from hell, and been hospitalized multiple times. Her husband knew of her struggles but left her alone with the children, believing she was improving. Andrea's doctors had taken her off her antipsychotic medication just weeks before, a decision that proved catastrophic. What makes this case so disturbing is the intersection of mental illness and motherhood. Andrea Yates loved her children, but her psychosis convinced her that killing them was an act of mercy. At her 2002 trial, she was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison, but the verdict was overturned in 2006 due to flawed testimony. A second trial found her not guilty by reason of insanity, and she was committed to a psychiatric hospital where she remains today. The case sparked a national conversation about postpartum depression, mental health care, and the responsibility of families to recognize warning signs. But for many, the image of 5 innocent children betrayed by the one person meant to protect them is a nightmare that lingers. Let's move to our next case where a killer's charm hid a deadly secret. Part 5, Case 4, Ted Bundy and the Chi Omega Murders. It's January 15, 1978 in Tallahassee, Florida, on the campus of Florida State University. The Chi Omega sorority house is quiet, its residents asleep after a Saturday night out. At 2:45 a.m., a man slips through an unlocked door, his movements silent and deliberate. Ted Bundy, a 31-year-old law student with a charming smile and a deadly secret, has already killed dozens of women across the U.S. But tonight, he's on a rampage. Armed with a wooden club, he moves from room to room, attacking 4 women in a matter of minutes. Lisa Levy, 20, and Margaret Bowman, 21, are beaten to death, their skulls crushed, their bodies violated. 2 others, Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner, are brutally assaulted but survive, their screams finally driving Bundy away. Bundy's attack doesn't stop there. Less than an hour later, he breaks into a nearby apartment and attacks another student, Cheryl Thomas, leaving her with a fractured jaw and permanent injuries. The Chi Omega murders are a chilling chapter in Bundy's reign of terror, which spanned years and claimed at least 30 lives. What makes this case so disturbing is Bundy's duality. He was handsome, articulate, and charismatic, often luring his victims with a fake injury or a plea for help. He used his charm to gain trust, only to reveal the monster beneath, torturing and killing with a cold detachment that shocked even seasoned investigators. Bundy was finally arrested in February 1978 after a traffic stop revealed his stolen car. His trial for the Chi Omega murders became a media circus. He acted as his own attorney, proposing to his girlfriend in court, all while evidence of his brutality was laid bare. Bite marks on Lisa Levy's body matched Bundy's teeth, a rare forensic match that sealed his fate. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Executed in Florida's electric chair in 1989. In his final days, Bundy confessed to 30 murders, though some believe the true number is much higher. The Chi Omega murders remind us that evil can wear a friendly face, hiding in plain sight until it's too late. Let's move to our next case where a community's trust was shattered by a predator in uniform. Part 6, Case 5. The Golden State Killer. It's the late 1970s in Sacramento, California, a time when suburbs were considered safe, doors were left unlocked, and neighbors trusted each other, but a predator was stalking the night. A man who would become known as the Golden State Killer. Joseph James DeAngelo, a 32-year-old former police officer, began his reign of terror as the East Area Rapist, breaking into homes, tying up his victims, and assaulting them while their families slept nearby. By 1979, he escalated to murder, killing couples in their beds, often after hours of psychological torture, stacking dishes on the husband's back, threatening to kill them if they fell before committing his atrocities. Between 1976 and 1986, DeAngelo committed at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and over 100 burglaries across California, earning monikers like the original Night Stalker and the Visalia Ransacker. What makes this case so disturbing is the scale and sadism of his crimes. He targeted entire families, often spending hours in their homes, eating their food, and leaving behind ligatures as a calling card. He taunted his victims with phone calls years later, whispering, "I'm going to kill you." Long after they thought the nightmare was over, his background as a police officer gave him an edge. He knew how to avoid detection, how to cover his tracks, how to blend in. For decades, the Golden State Killer evaded capture, the case growing cold as leads dried up. But in 2018, a breakthrough came through forensic genealogy. Investigators uploaded the killer's DNA, preserved from crime scenes, to GEDmatch, a public genealogy database, and traced it to distant relatives, eventually identifying DeAngelo. At 72 years old, he was arrested in his Citrus Heights home, a quiet retiree who had lived a double life for over 40 years. In 2020, DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 13 murders and 13 rape charges, sentenced to life without parole. Survivors finally saw justice, but the scars of his terror remain. The Golden State Killer case shows how technology can solve the unsolvable, but also how long evil can hide in plain sight. Let's move to our final case, where a city's silence hid a monster. Part 7, Case 6, Jeffrey Dahmer and the House of Horrors. It's July 22, 1991 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a city known for its breweries and blue-collar grit. In a rundown apartment building at 924 North 25th Street, a man flees into the night, handcuffs dangling from one wrist. Tracy Edwards, 32, flags down 2 police officers, his voice trembling as he tells them a horrifying story. He had been lured to the apartment of Jeffrey Dahmer, a quiet 31-year-old with a boyish face, under the pretense of drinks and a movie. But once inside, Dahmer tried to handcuff him, brandishing a knife and threatening to eat his heart. Edwards escaped, and what the police found in Dahmer's apartment would become the stuff of nightmares. Apartment 213 was a house of horrors. Inside, officers discovered photographs of dismembered bodies, a 57-gallon drum filled with acid and human remains, and a refrigerator containing human heads, torsos, and organs. Dahmer confessed to killing 17 young men and boys between 1978 and 1991, luring them to his apartment with promises of money or sex. What makes this case so disturbing is the depravity of his acts. He dismembered his victims, preserved their body parts, and engaged in necrophilia and cannibalism, attempting to create zombies by drilling holes into their skulls and injecting acid. He targeted vulnerable men, many from marginalized communities, whose disappearances went unnoticed for years. What's even more chilling is how close Dahmer came to being caught. In May 1991, 14-year-old Konorak Sintizomophone escaped Dahmer's apartment naked and drugged, but police returned him to Dahmer after he convinced them Konorak was his boyfriend. Hours later, Konorak was dead, one of Dahmer's final victims. Neighbors had complained for years about the smell from Dahmer's apartment, but their concerns were ignored, a failure that cost lives. Dahmer was arrested in 1991 and sentenced to 16 life terms in 1992, but he was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. The case exposed systemic failures, police negligence, racial bias, and the invisibility of certain victims, and remains a haunting reminder of the monsters who walk among us. We've reached the end of our journey through these disturbing cases, but the shadows they cast are far from gone. Part 8, Conclusion. The shadows remain. We've walked through 6 of the most disturbing cases in true crime history. stories of brutality, betrayal, and the darkest corners of the human psyche. From the Hinterkaifeck murders, where a family was slaughtered by a killer who lived among their corpses, to Jeffrey Dahmer's House of Horrors, where the cries of the vulnerable went unheard, these cases remind us that evil can take many forms, often hiding in plain sight. Some of these killers were caught, their crimes exposed to the light, but others remained shadows, their identities lost to history. What drives someone to commit such acts? Is it madness, upbringing, or something deeper, something we'll never fully understand? These cases also leave us with questions about justice, about society, about ourselves. Why did 38 witnesses watch Kitty Genovese die without acting? How did the Golden State Killer evade capture for so long, even as a former police officer? And what can we do to ensure the vulnerable, like Konarak Sinthasimphone, are heard before it's too late? The victims of these crimes deserve to be remembered, their stories a call to action for a world that too often turns away. So what do you think? Which case disturbed you the most? Do you believe justice was served, or are there still answers out there waiting to be found? Tell me in the comments below. Your thoughts might spark the breakthrough these cases need. If these stories have left you chilled, if they've stirred something deep within, don't go far. There are more mysteries waiting, more shadows to explore. Like, share, and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. We'll be back with more tales that haunt the edges of your nightmares. For now, take a moment for the victims, for the lives cut short, for the stories that will never fade. This is where we leave the darkness. Until next time, what do you see in the shadows?